For this first rig, all you need is some leader line, a hook suitable for whichever bait you plan on using, some glow beads or soft beads, and a float with the matching sinker weight. For example, this float can support up to 80 grams, so I'm using a 50-gram sinker, which leaves us with about 30 grams for our bait. To start, you just want to tie one side of your leader line to your swivel. I just use a uni knot for this. So create a loop. You can use whichever knot you prefer, but I find the uni knot really reliable. It's never let me down, so I've always just stuck with it. Now once you've tied your leader line to your swivel, you just want to make sure you always lubricate your line and your knot so you don't singe your line, which will weaken it from the friction. Once you've done that, you want to feed the float onto your leader like so. Then you want to feed on the matching sinker, and then feed on a single glow bead, and then you tie on the hook that's going to match whatever type of bait you're using. So once again, I'm using a uni knot, but you guys can use whichever knot you're most comfortable with. There's a lot of great knots out there, so whichever one you're most comfortable with is going to be the best. It's better to use a knot you're comfortable with than trying to tie a knot you're not comfortable with and then ending up with a dodgy knot. There we go. So now we just cut tag ends off. And then we're pretty much done. So you've got your swivel to about 1 meter of leader line, and then you've got your float followed by your sinker weight, a glow bead to protect the knot on the hook, and then the hook to match the type of bait you're using. Now the reason I like to rig this way is because you're going to have the weight of your bait, the sinker and the float all in one place. When you're casting, you get a much better cast compared to if you're using the float and weight above the swivel with a float stopper, because then you end up with weight on two parts of your line which pull in opposite directions when you cast. If you keep all your weight centralized like this, you get a way better cast. This rig is really good if you're fishing off the rocks, a wharf or a jetty, and then all you would do is just connect the other side of the swivel to your main line. Now for this next rig, all you need is some leader line suitable for whatever species you're targeting, a couple of glow beads or soft beads, a swivel to reduce line twist, 2 hooks to match whatever size bait you plan on using, 1 sliding clip for your sinker weight, and then a sinker weight that will match the cast weight of the rod you're going to be using. So to start, you want to tie on one of your hooks to your leader line using whichever knot you're most comfortable with, because the strongest knot is always the knot that you tie best. Then once you've done that, remember to lubricate your line and the knot before you pull it tight. Then you want to cut your tag end off. Now to attach our second hook, you want to cut about 1 meter of leader. So you've got about 1 meter of leader. You want to feed your second hook through that leader, and then you want to measure it out to match whatever size bait you plan on using. And then you just want to pinch your leader in line with the shank of the hook, and then you want to bring the leader over and then start wrapping it around the shank of the hook, making sure that you keep each wrap nice and tight and right up against the previous wrap. Now you just want to do sort of 10 to 15 wraps will be absolutely plenty. Just keep it nice and tight, nice and neat, and right up against each other. Once you're happy with that, you want to pinch it so it doesn't loosen up, and then feed the leader back through the eye of the hook, and then you can just pull it nice and tight like so, and then you end up with a snelled hook in addition to the first hook we tied on. Now this hook is not going to move. I am going to show you a rig with an adjustable second hook which matches any size bait, but for this rig it's a fixed hook, so make sure you measure it up against the bait you plan on using. Now if you're going to run a sinker straight to your hook, so if you're fishing from a boat a wharf or a jetty, you can literally run your sinker straight to the top of your top hook. If you're going to do that though, you want to put a soft bead or a glow bead, just as long as it's something soft, not a hard bead, because you want it to protect where the line meets the hook, so you don't have your sinker just banging up against it. So if you're going to be using it from a wharf, a jetty or a boat, you can just run it like so. So you'd have your hooks with a bead and then your sinker, and then you just tie a swivel on, and then you would have your main line attached to the other side of the swivel, and that will pretty much cover quite a few different species. Remember to cut your tag end off. Also remember to lubricate your line, which I didn't do just then. So you'd have main line to the other end, and then you've got your leader, sinker with a bead to protect your top hook, and then your bottom hook. This is really good if you're using medium-sized baits like pilchards, whole pilchards or whole bait fish. You can use smaller baits. You just use a smaller hook to match whatever bait you're using. Now, if you're fishing from a beach, then you wouldn't necessarily want to run the sinker straight to your top hook. So in that situation, you would just tie your leader straight to your swivel without having a sinker or a bead or anything like that above your top hook. Then you might as well lubricate it this time. Okay, cut off our tag end. You would put the rig aside. You would grab your main line. So I'm using a really heavy braid just so it's easier for you guys to see what I'm actually doing. And then on that braid, you would start by feeding on one bead, glow bead or soft bead. Doesn't want to go on because I think it's too thick for this bead. So there we go. Then you would feed on a sliding clip, followed by another soft bead. Now I'll explain why we're doing this in just a second. Now that you've got a glow bead, your sliding clip and another glow bead, now you would tie your main line to the other end of the swivel. Now if you're going to use a union knot to tie a braid onto your terminal tackle, make sure you always do a few extra wraps because braid can slip. So with mono you only need 4 or 5 wraps. With braid it's better to do sort of 7 or 8 wraps just to make sure it grips properly and doesn't slip. And then we cut our tag end off. Now what this does is it allows us to use whatever sinker size we want on the clip. So for example, if you pop a star sinker on, if the water's too rough and the sinker's not holding, you can just open the clip, change sinkers, or if your sinker's too heavy, you can just again open the clip, change sinkers. Now the reason you've got the beads is the bead on the left is going to protect the tip of your rod in case you don't notice when you're fighting the fish and you're bringing that in, and then the clip smacks into the tip of your rod because you can damage your rod. And then the bead on the other end, on the right side, is going to protect the knot that's connecting your main line to the swivel. Okay, and then also the reason why this type of rig is great, especially if you're fishing off a beach, is when the sinker gets to the bottom, the line can still freely pass through the actual sliding clip and the fish won't feel the weight of the bait until you've already hooked it. So again, you would have glow bead to your sliding clip with your sinker on it, your other glow bead to protect the knot connecting your main line to the swivel. Other side of the swivel, you've got about 1 meter of leader to our 2-hook rig. Now for this next rig, all you're going to need is some leader line to match whatever species you're targeting, 2 hooks to match whatever size bait you plan on using, some glow beads or soft beads, a swivel to reduce line twist, a sliding clip for your sinker weight, and then a sinker that matches the cast weight of whatever rod you plan on using. Now to get started, you want to tie on your bottom hook using whatever knot you're most comfortable with. I am once again going to use the union knot, so we'll just tie that on like so. And then you want to make sure you're lubricating your leader line as well as the knot before you pull it tight, just to make sure it doesn't singe. Cut our tag end off. Now this next part is the key to the whole rig. We're going to feed 2 glow beads onto our leader line, but the glow beads you use have to be a really tight fit for the size of hook you're using, because what we're going to do is we're going to push this top hook through the glow beads so that we end up with an adjustable hook, but it has to be a really tight fit, otherwise the rig just doesn't work, right? So make sure that whatever size bead you're using is a really tight fit for whatever size hook you're using. And then you just want to feed the glow beads all the way up the shank of your hook, so it sits right under the eye of your hook, like so. You want to get them both up there. Now just make sure you don't hook yourself in the process, which I've done quite a few times. It's not very enjoyable. Okay, so once you've got both your glow beads all the way up to the eye of the hook, you have to make sure that you feed your leader back through the eye of the hook so that your leader's passing through the actual hook, right? Because we're only using the beads to hold the hook in place. But if you catch a good fish on it and you haven't passed the leader through the eye of the hook, the beads aren't going to save you. The fish will break the beads, right? But you will end up with an adjustable 2-hook rig to match literally any size bait. As long as it's really tight, so a little bit difficult to move your hook, then you've done it correctly. And again, make sure you pass your leader back through the eye of the hook, so that way, even if the fish does take your top hook and the beads do break, your line being passed through the eye of the hook just means that your hook would go all the way down to your bottom hook, which is tied on, so it won't go anywhere. Okay? Now, once we've done this, we just want to attach our weight. So the next step now is to tie our leader, which is 1 meter long. We're using about 1 meter long leader for this rig. You want to tie the other end of your leader to your swivel so that we can attach it to our main line. So tie that on, lubricate our line, pull it nice and tight, and then cut off our tag end like so. Then we're just going to put this aside for a second. We want to grab our main line, and like we did with the previous rig, you want to feed on a bead, then you want to feed on your sliding clip like so, followed by another soft bead. Okay, now we attach our main line to the other end of the swivel. So again, use whatever knot you're most comfortable with. The strongest knot is the knot that you tie best. No point trying to tie a fancy knot if you're not going to get it right, because any knot that's tied correctly is going to be a lot stronger than a dodgy knot. There you go. Cut our tag end. And that's the rig done. So we've got a bead on one side to protect the tip of our rod, with our sliding clip that's going to hold our sinker, another bead which is going to protect the knot that connects your main line to your actual leader so that the sliding clip doesn't keep rubbing up against it. And then on the other end we've got our leader with our adjustable 2-hook rig, which you can adjust to match any size bait. Just remember, the bead has to be a really tight fit for whatever size hook you're using. That's the key to this entire rig. Anyway guys, I hope this video helps, and I'll catch you in the next one.